screen. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. This is Drew Amoroso again, and thanks for joining us today for this week's edition of 11 at 11. I appreciate you being here, and congratulations to you for taking some time out of your busy week to work on yourself and on your workday. Today, I want to explore what I see as our tendency to sometimes fall into the mindset of thinking and believing that the work that we do is not important. And also our tendency to sort of pull us down from this very high level of creativity where we've created something that we really like, but then we go out and we tamp that down by looking for approval and validation of other people, right, in order to confirm what we believe about something that we've created. So at a high level, we should just start out by saying that people are impacted every day by the efforts that we make, right? What we say and the way that we conduct ourselves. The challenge, though, is that because we each live in our own body and our own mind and our own experience every day, we can't see the strength of the impact that we have on people around us, right? We're not necessarily able to see how the things that we do impact and influence other people. We almost never can know how big of an impact we're making because it's not something we can really easily quantify or see. And one of the reasons it's so hard to measure the strength of something like that is because many people don't tell us how much what we're doing is influencing them or helping them. So in other words, even though our work may be changing the lives of the people around us in small or in large ways, that feedback may never reach us for one reason or another. So I want you to just take a second and call to mind a time when you thought that you did a stellar job at something. Maybe you went above and beyond for someone. You created what you thought was an excellent piece of work product or did something that had the potential to really help someone else out. And when you created that thing, you had this welling up inside of you, right? This feeling that what you were doing was really hitting the mark, and you felt like maybe it was your best work, or you felt like it was created when you were in a state of flow or in a flow state. Call to mind a time like this and think about how good that felt, right? In moments like that, I think it's a signal that the work that we're doing or something that we've created is in alignment with who we are, right? Like we sort of hit a pocket of genius or a sweet spot, and it feels great to be in that kind of a moment. And sometimes when we have moments like this, we end up expecting to receive some sort of praise or acknowledgement that confirms what we felt during the process of creating it, right? So in other words, we had this elevated feeling of creating something, and so because we experienced it, we expected other people to notice it too. And we also have an expectation, or at least a desire, that they will tell us that they noticed it, right? So let me give you an example from my day-to-day. So each week I spend time preparing these episodes, and I spend time creating episodes for my podcast called the Workday Mindset Podcast. And I also publish blog posts too, and do all sorts of other things that are creative. And sometimes I'll have a moment of creativity where I feel like I've just done my absolute best I can to explain something that I want to convey. Or I'm really happy with how I turned what I thought was a challenging subject or a topic into something that was valuable, but also easy to understand in around 11 minutes, right? And when those moments happen, I have a feeling of true satisfaction, and there's a sense of excitement that comes with that moment. But sometimes after I reach that high point and that moment of satisfaction, I have a feeling that follows it where I wonder what other people will think about it, right? And that thought sometimes creeps in. Even though I've had this incredible creative process, I wonder whether what I said will resonate with people, whether it will make sense, whether you'll see and understand the thought and the effort that I put into crafting something that I took pride in crafting. So in other words, I'm out on a mission to seek validation from other people. And in that moment where I start to seek validation, where I start to wonder what other people will think about my work, it pulls me down from that really high vibration that allows me to enjoy and to celebrate and to get excited about what I've created. And it also takes me away from continuing to have that feeling, which inevitably helps me to show up at my best over and over again, right? It pulls me away from this elevated state that I was living in, because even though I was excited about what I've produced, there's a part of me that still gets caught up in wanting validation from others in order to legitimize how I felt in creating what I created. And so I first just want to draw your attention to this thing that we can get caught up in experiencing, which is the sense of wanting validation from other people to confirm what we think about the quality and the valuableness of the work that we do. There's a second aspect here that I want to draw your attention to. Layered on top of our desire for validation is our tendency to take the lack of responses from people who we show our work to, or who we go out of our way for, or who we've really tried so hard to help. We tend to take their lack of affirmation around our work as a confirmation that what we did wasn't as good as we thought, right? In other words, when we don't hear words of approval and when we don't get the reaction that we want, when we don't feel like someone comprehends the effort that we put into creating something, we can feel like our efforts were for nothing, that no one's listening, no one's noticing, and that we didn't do as good a job as we thought we did, right? This kind of validation seeking, where we essentially tamp down the excitement we have for something that we've created or an effort that we've made, that we know came from a genuine and pure place, that can rob us of the ability to really celebrate what we know was an expression of us being in our sweet spot, right? Or being in our element. And if we're constantly judging the value of our contributions based on what other people say, then we're missing out on the intrinsic value that comes from creating something that is uniquely ours, right? And each day we're walking through our day creating things that are uniquely ours. But we have to remember that just because we aren't receiving direct affirmations from people, that doesn't mean our work isn't impactful, right? We have what I would call silent benefactors who are all around us, whose lives we are impacting each and every day with the work that we do, right? Our work creates this ripple effect that's hard to appreciate or to quantify, but that reaches really far outside of our immediate awareness, right? This little bubble that we kind of live in each day. And of course, it would be great to see and hear the results of our efforts from people in real time. But if we're not regularly getting that feedback, it doesn't mean that our work isn't valuable or is going unnoticed, right? It just means we're not potentially receiving feedback or direct feedback. So I want to give you a way to translate this into your day-to-day. And I'd like to do that by just giving you two things to think about that are in line with this concept of silent benefactors. First, the next time you have a moment where you've put a lot of effort and used your own creative genius to create something in your day-to-day work, and you felt like you created it from a place of alignment, right? And you felt excited about it, but you feel like the value of that work isn't getting through to other people, I want you to take a moment to reconsider that assumption. I want you to consider the possibility that you probably are impacting lots of people around you through your work, but they may just not be relaying that message to you. And as a way to think about this, I want you to consider how often you have been impacted by someone's work or their words, something that they said or how they made you feel, and how even though you appreciated it or benefited from it, you didn't communicate that appreciation to them for one reason or another. Right? I can think of plenty of times where I've been the recipient of someone's creative genius or advice, and because I was so caught up in my own reality, it didn't even cross my mind until they were gone or until sometime later to acknowledge them in a formal way. So in a nutshell, I think we can look at our own experience for an understanding that we're likely impacting so many more people around us than we think that we are. The second and final and related takeaway is that it's important for us to remember that feedback is different from validation. So when we put our own message and our own work out into the world, it's great to seek feedback, because feedback allows us to continue to refine what we do in a way that will allow us to help more people and therefore make our work even more impactful. But seeking feedback is different from validation. Validation is the act of seeking approval of who we are, right? It's asking people to confirm that we and our message and our work has intrinsic value. Right? It's asking people to confirm that our opinions are valid or have meaning. And when we look for validation, we end up tamping down who we are, right? And the genius that we bring to the things that we do. And when we engage in this tamping down, we can't ever fully show up as the best version of ourselves. And it forces us to hide away some of our genius because we're fearful that people may not approve. And it takes us from this really high place where we're vibrating and feeling good about what we're creating to this lower place. So I just want you to notice the difference between feedback and validation, right? Feedback's great because it's the act of wanting to constantly refine and improve. But at its core, feedback is not an attempt to validate your work. It's just a refinement of your unique ability. So as you move through your day, and start with this today, if you catch yourself seeking validation, take a moment to remember the difference and try to steer yourself towards seeking feedback instead, right? If you're not hearing anything from people around you about your work, it's okay to ask them what they think about it. And we should be using that information to refine what we create because it's valuable. But remember to not take feedback you receive as a commentary on who you are or your innate ability to add value. Before we sign off for today, does anyone have an example that comes to mind for them of how you might be seeking validation instead of feedback? Or can you call to mind a time when you thought, you know what, this thing I created, it was the best expression of myself, I did the best I could, but then you were pulled back down by wanting approval from other people? Thank you, Roxanne. We will leave it there for today. Thanks again for joining, everyone. Would love to connect with you and get your help spreading the word about this series. If you could share it with a friend or give us a shout out on social media, we would really appreciate that. I have all of our tags here up on the screen. Our next episode is next Monday, October 19th, and we're going to be talking about control. Specifically, I want us to take a look at how we not only use the word control and how that influences our actions, but how we have this illusion that we have control over things like our workday or the people that we work with. And I want to suggest to you that there's a better framework that we can substitute for the idea of control. And that framework is trying to understand how we can become an active participant in our day-to-day experience instead of seeking control. So I'll look forward to diving into that with you on October 19th. I will see you then. Thanks again for joining, and go have a great work day.
Thanks, Drew. Bye,
Thanks, guys.
everyone. Bye,
Take care.
Roxanne.
Bye.